Hi, this is Joe Shannon. I'm a lawyer, a husband, a father of 6 kids, and I also host a podcast called Opening Statement with Joe Shannon. Please consider listening to our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, and any other folks that host podcasts. Just Google Joe Shannon and podcast, and you'll find it. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hey, we're speaking with Michael Ettinger of New York, New York. How are you, Michael?
I'm good, Joe. Let me take you off speaker, okay?
That's great.
If I can remember how to do that in this strange world we live in.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll proceed. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing really well. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time. I get to interview a lot of folks, and one thing I like to do is I really like to interview people that are probably the best in their field. And I tell you, I really did a lot of research on your trademark process and the service you provide, and I find it to be unique in the United States.
It is. First of all, thank you for the kind words, but it is unique, and for your listeners, we're an elder law estate planning firm, and what we've done is we've combined these two fields of law: elder law, which is disability planning, and estate planning, which is death planning. And for a number of years now, more than 2 decades, I've taken the position that it's actually one field, that you can't plan for disability without planning for death and vice versa. So we renamed the field because for political purposes, the bar has an elder law section and they have an estate planning section because the estate planning section is 100 years old and the elder law section is maybe, half of that, 40, 50 years old. So they have different, histories, backgrounds. But to the general public, everybody needs a lawyer who can do both. Nobody wants to do a plan for disability without saying what happens when they die and vice versa. So these days, these fields are merging. And for our listeners who are, confused between elder law and estate planning, well, elder law is disability planning and estate planning is death planning.
So let's break this down here. So some of the things that I found fascinating by this was your business model, the way you do things, is that folks, first of all, they can find you at trustlaw.com. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's right. So.
That's a pretty good website because you believe that creating a trust is a really good start for some folks. But the thing I liked about it was that you keep your clients in control of the process with their pocketbook. Isn't that right?
Very astute of you to pick that up. To my knowledge, we're the only estate planning firm in the country that takes no fees until the matter is completed. And this arises out of the traditional way of planning. All estate planning lawyers are trained the same way. We're trained to have our 1 or 2 consultations, present the client who's interested or willing to go ahead, present them with a fee agreement, which they sign outlining the terms, and they usually give the retainer check for about half the fee. And I did this myself for many years until I sat down and tried to analyze it and analyze why lawyers are trained to do it this way. And I finally realized that the reason lawyers are trained to do it this way is because it's good for the lawyer. Why else, But is it good for the client? I don't think it's good for the client because when the client signs the retainer agreement and gives a check for half, the client actually has nothing to show for it. In fact, the client is in a net negative. They actually are minus because they have paid something and they have nothing. So they actually have a loss of control. They've given up something.
How long have you been doing that for, Michael?
What, the no fee until completion?
Yeah.
I would say probably close to 10 years now. But let me tell you why we do it, Joe, because what we realized is if we don't charge any fees until it's done and the client's satisfied, you mentioned it, but I just want to elaborate. We're putting the client in control of the process. We're saying, look, you are always in control here. You can get up and walk away at any time until you signed everything and you declared you're satisfied, and only then are the payments due. So I actually have a fee proposal. They don't sign it. I sign it. And I say, unless and until you write us a check, you have no obligation to the firm. This, in my view, is an absolute breakthrough in legal thinking, because lawyers do not think this way. They're not client-centric, customer-centric. They don't put the client first. It's not the way we're trained. It's not the way the profession is built. But it's the way the world is today. It just, the law profession hasn't caught on to it.
You know, I when I first met you and I heard this process, so I'm an injury lawyer. So I try cases, and I'm what they call a 100% commission salesman for people that are listening. I don't get paid unless we come through for the client. Right. And I saw this as kind of like a similar thing for you guys, because you agree to help folks, and then unless they like the process, they don't pay you.
No. Well, any good entrepreneur knows that, basically it's a money back guarantee. Every good business person knows that when you have a money back guarantee, you're going to lose, 1-2% of your clients will, not go ahead, or, they'll want their money back. It's just the nature of the world. But you'll end up doing twice as much work. You'll do twice as much business, because the guarantee is very, gives people a sense of safety and security that they wouldn't otherwise have. So you end up doing a lot more, and what you lose by giving up the guarantee is just the cost of doing business. It's not significant.
Now, so but before we get into this very interesting process, when I was in law school, I took a number of courses, and one of them that we had to take was tax law. And I was like, are you kidding me? This is going to be so boring. It ended up being like one of the most interesting classes I've ever taken. And, when I saw that, people were speaking about trusts and estates and wills and all these types of things, I thought it was the same thing. But, one of the things that I know for a fact is that 100% of us are going to pass away. And I think you give a stat that 50% of people at some point in their life are going to be under a disability. So your product is needed more than ever, because people want to keep control of the process of what's their legacy.
Well, you bring up a good point. You hear from financial advisors, accountants, lawyers, you need a will, you need a will, you need a will. But actually that is passé in my view, because having practiced elder law now for more than 30 years, I believe that planning for disability is more important than planning for death. Because if you ignore disability, with the cost of long-term care today, there may be nothing left for the people after you're gone. So if you don't move to protect the assets, it becomes a moot point.
And it seems like there's a vacuum there, that if you don't make the decision and you don't prepare properly with a guy like Michael Ettinger and his group, somebody else is going to be there to make the decisions for you, including the state of New York.
Well, exactly. We talked about this. What are you doing with all these legal documents? When you get an estate plan, actually, you're taking back control from the courts, from the government, and you're giving it back to yourselves and your family. If somebody becomes disabled and they don't have a plan, they get the state's plan, which is state-appointed legal guardian. You have called a conservator in some states, the same thing. You have a stranger handling the affairs. The family has no say. And generally, that person is empowered to spend your money on you till there's nothing left. They don't have options to move to protect assets because they're subject to court supervision. It's not a private matter. So we want to avoid not only having a stranger, but also ending up with the state's plan, which is basically spend it on you till there's nothing left.
Wow. So listen, what I always try and do with folks is, I think people, when they hire a lawyer or a law firm, they want to know who they are as a person. So can you give us a little bit of background about your upbringing and how you came to the point where you've been practicing for 30 years?
Oh yeah, well you got me smiling now. Who doesn't like to talk about how they came up and whatnot. But I'm probably more entrepreneurial than most lawyers, and so I started at a young age. I had a paper route when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and as you know, I'm born and raised in Montreal. I even went out one morning. It was 26 below zero, and delivered my papers. At 6 o'clock in the morning, because what did I know? I had
what was the name of the paper, Michael?
It was the Montreal Gazette.
And how many folks did you have on your route?
I had about 45, and it was amazing how much money I made at the time. I was just astonished. Every 2 weeks, I made about $40, and we're talking 50, but more than 50 years ago. I had so much money, didn't know what to do with it. Rich beyond my wildest dreams.
I had a paper out too. I had about 150 papers for the Yakima Herald Republic in Yakima, Washington. And I tell you, those memories of basically learned capitalism at an early age, that number one, you got to deliver the service. Number two, you get paid for what you do. And number three, I remember, Michael, going door to door to collect every.
That's right. We called it collecting, right? You go collecting. Did you have the same term?
Oh my gosh. I had a little book, and I went around and I did collections, and I did 150. I went to 150 doors every month, and I found out a lot about business. I found out about, for the most part, people paid their bills, but there was a certain percentage that would always avoid me or have a dog greet me.
Oh, listen, we got our experience of life. I had one client who come to the door in a negligee all the time. I was so excited to go collect from her.
But I remember like it was yesterday. I remember more the generous people that at Christmas time or other times would basically go out of their way to make me feel good. And I had that route for a couple of years, but I tell you, I wish every kid in America or Canada, where you grew up, could have had a paper route. I know nowadays it's not, the folks that are doing the routes are doing the cars, and there's not really, as robust a paper business because it's all online. But to this day, I still read the Wall Street Journal every day and get it delivered to my driveway. And I like the process, but yeah, so you grew up with that. What are some of your other memorable jobs growing up?
Well, I just want to say, you remind me of something that we know as lawyers. Whenever you have a bad interaction with a client, or a client disappoints you, which is, of course, inevitable, invariably, a short time later, some other client comes along and just completely reaffirms your faith in humanity. It's just, somehow it just works that way. There's so many good people. There's a few bad apples, but people generally are so good. They just continually restore your faith in mankind. So, when I got into my teens, I started a window washing business, and I was going around to houses in nice neighborhoods in Montreal, and I would knock on people's door and I would say, "Would you like your windows washed?" And they would say, "Well, how much is it?" And I'd say, "Well, it's $100." And they said, "Yeah, forget it." So, I went back to the drawing board, and I came up with a new approach. People, I would knock on the door. People would say, "Wash your windows." People would say, "Well, how much is it?" And I would say, "Well, do you want us to do the outside and the inside?" They would go, "Yes." I say, "Would you like us to take down the screens, hose them down, dry them, and put them back?" "Yes." "Okay." They'd say, "Yes." They say, "You want us to wash down the sills, wipe them, and dry them?" They go, yes. And then I would repeat all the services. Okay, so you want this, 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 and this. That'll be $100. And I got almost every job.
Wow.
Which taught me a lesson. Marketing is actually communicating, isn't it?
Wow.
All I
That's
was
good
doing, I
stuff.
was communicating better. That's all. And I use those lessons to this day, 50 years later. You have to communicate the nature and value of what you're providing in a way that people can understand it. A lot of lawyers, they'll get up and they'll put on a seminar lecture. Nobody knows what they said.
So let me figure this out. You got a paper out when you're 8 or 9. You figure out a business to clean people's windows inside and out. What did your parents do for a living?
Now you see, when I grew up in Montreal, my father was an entrepreneur, but all of my uncles were entrepreneurs and all my father's friends were entrepreneurs. I thought that in life you own your own business because that's all I knew. I mean, everybody I knew owned their own business. That was the milieu I grew up in. So I've always been oriented towards having and running my own business, and it has its ups and downs, but wouldn't trade it for the world.
That's great. So then you left that business, I'm assuming, when you were in high school, and what did you do after that?
Well, I got into law school early. I was 19 when I went to law school because they had a program for you could accelerate it. I was at McGill University in Montreal, and they would take 10 students from the undergraduate and let them go to law school right after 2 years of college. It was an experimental program. Anyway, I did the arithmetic. I said I can get out of college here 3 years earlier. I'm in. So I was very fortunate. I got in at 19. The problem was I got out, and I even took an extra year and did a second degree. But I got out. I was 22, and I said, who needs a 22-year-old lawyer? Nobody. So I went and I did a master's degree in England, and I got a master's in maritime law. And that's how I was able to move from New York to the United States, because I had an international law field that was good all over the world. Shipping law is the same all over the world. So I was able to apply for jobs in New York, and I got a job in New York as a maritime lawyer. And I did that for maybe 5 or 6 years, just doing litigation. Then I went out. I opened my own practice. After about 5 years working with a major firm, I realized when you work for a large firm, you have to do what the firm wants you to do. You have to be a good soldier. I had no beef with the firm. I just knew that I didn't fit in there because you have to. You have to play politics. You have to be accommodating. You have to, brown nose, for better of a word. And I'm just, when you're an entrepreneur, you're terrible at that. You have no ability to play up to people, or to, suck up to people, or however you want to put it. It's just not in your nature. And the other thing about entrepreneurs is we actually know what to do. We're just born with that sense of this is what you do and how you do it. Or we do trial and error. And in a law firm, when you're working for a big firm, you have to do what they want you to do. Whether it's right or wrong is irrelevant. If it's, I had a firm tell me that I wasn't putting out enough work, and they would tell me about another associate who was doing much more. And I looked at her work, and I said, I know, but her work is of very poor quality. I don't know how to do careless, sloppy work. But I understood after I thought it through more. I said, you know what? They're right. I'm wrong. They need volume. It doesn't have to be that good. It just is not it's not my standard, but it's not my firm either. Right?
Yeah. So you decided to leave after 5. So you got your master's at the London School of Economics, right?
Correct. Yes.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
Did you have a good year in London?
Well, when I got there, I discovered you can't eat English food if you want to survive. So, those people, I don't know how their taste buds are connected, but the food there is terrible. This was the 1970s. So I developed a taste for Indian food, and
Yes.
I have that to that day. They have great Indian food in England,
Yeah,
but it
I
was
was
a
there
lot.
in the late '80s, and
Yeah,
it's all cosmopolitan food. That's what you eat. You eat the Indian food. You eat the, you know,
yeah, Thai, Chinese, anything except English.
yeah, exactly right. But it was a fascinating city. I'll tell you that much.
It's a great city. My daughter just graduated from journalism there, so we were there in January for her graduation. It was nice for me to go back and spend some time there. But
Nice.
so what happened was after about 5 years, I went ahead. I opened my own practice. I hung out my shingle as a litigation attorney. You know, I did that for another 5 years, and then I was about 10 years into it. And as a lawyer, probably my 11th year, I heard about this new concept that if you set up a trust, you don't have to go to court to settle the estate. And I thought, wow, who doesn't want that? I mean, I had litigated a number of will contests. I knew there were a lot of problems with wills. So I looked into it and I found out this is back in 91. Not only was it true that if you set up a trust, you don't have to go to court to settle the estate, like a will has to go to probate court. But at the time, the best estate planning lawyers were in Florida. So, as you can imagine, why, right?
Yeah.
So I went down to Florida, got trained as very good estate planning lawyers. I came back, I closed my litigation practice, founded Ettinger Law Firm, April of 91, 30 years ago, just to keep people out of court. And, I don't have to tell you, going to court is a loss. It doesn't matter whose side you're on. It's a losing proposition. I mean, even you as a personal injury lawyer are going to do everything you can to avoid a court proceeding because you lose my favorite word. You lose control. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how the judge is going to rule. And, you've been an attorney long enough to know that when you go to court, you can lose a slam dunk case. I have.
No, I get it. No, I know that I think it was Abraham Lincoln that said avoid litigation at all costs. And one of the things that we do at our firm is try and educate the other side to do the right thing. And so totally different approach. But your approach on this when you started in '91, how many people were there with you, standing by you?
One, me and the secretary. That's how it started.
I like it. Now I'm looking at a picture. So, folks, you got to go to trustlaw.com and check this out. It is an absolute great website. I'm looking at this picture and I'm counting 22 women and 2 men. One of them's you, and that was another fella. But at this trustlaw.com, which is the Ettinger law firm, elder law estate planning, it's run by the ladies.
Well, I think that 20 ladies do the work of 50 men.
So let me see if I can. The thing I like about another thing I really like about your trademark process is that you've got a Michael, we're going to edit this out, but is there any way you can fix your microphone?
Yes, I'll try to.
We'll edit this out. Is there any way you can just speak directly into the phone?
Let me try. Hold on. It's amazing, but for some reason I'm having trouble doing that.
You mean changing from speaker to that?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think on actually when you show up on your iPhone, if you can just go into the iPhone part of it and then, or whatever phone it is, and then just tap on that where it says speaker and then tap off.
Let me ask my wife, Suzanne, can you come and help me with this?
I love it. I do it all the time.
I mean, I've never had a problem with it. So
yeah, it's not that big a deal. It's like, but we're getting such good stuff from you, and I just wanted to make sure it's somewhat clean. We'll be doing another one with you down the road on video, because this is, I mean, I got to tell you, Michael, this is one of the best products I've ever seen.
Well, Joe, it was going pretty good before the pandemic hit.
No,
I
I
have to
think you
tell
should
you.
double down right now while they're home. And I'm telling you. So are you just practicing New York only?
Practicing New York only, but it's hard to do it on the internet. We've done some remote signings. We're having remote phone calls. We're having video chats. Um, I'm doing a webinar tomorrow. I have about 250 people signed up, so I'm looking forward to that. But the bottom line is, people need to interact in person to do estate planning. It's very emotional. It's you need to read people's reactions. It's it's almost like a serious medical issue. You want to meet the doctor face to face, and try to get a feel for maybe some of all the nonverbal communication is lost. And the psychologists will tell you most communication is nonverbal.
No, I get it. I totally get it. I mean, I'm the same way. When I meet with somebody in person, it's a completely different setting than meeting like this or meeting, with a video. I totally agree with that. But
Yeah.
the thing is, this is a no-brainer, my friend.
Well,
I mean, this is an absolute no-brainer. If they understand this message, they're going to buy it.
Yeah, the thing is, Joe, to execute an estate plan is a vast amount of documents, which you have to get to the client. I mean, the client can't print out, that many pages on their little home printer. So now you got to get somebody to the office, which is problematical. They have to prepare the documents, send them. Now you have to go over a complex set of documents with a senior sitting at home looking at this pile of paper. The practical exigencies of getting it accomplished are rather difficult.
No, I get it. So let's continue on. Let's march on here. So I want to talk to you about your trademark process.
All right. Well, I was a strategic coach for many years, and one thing that every business has to do is they have to be able to distinguish themselves from other businesses. In other words, you have to be able to show the public why they should choose you. And that's been described as either your unique selling proposition, or the modern term is your unique value proposition. What do you offer the marketplace that nobody else is offering? So I had to sit down and figure out many years ago, what was it going to offer to the marketplace that nobody else is offering, or perhaps even willing to offer? And so I developed a process which is actually trademarked in Washington in '99. It's called the Ettinger Elder Law Estate Planning Process. And we do a number of things. So, of course, there's any number of estate planning lawyers that can prepare your estate plan. But the vast majority of them, when you're done, they actually, say thank you very much, goodbye. And in fact, they send you a letter. It's called the CYA letter. You know what that means. And the CYA letter says, thank you very much for your patronage. This concludes our representation of you in this matter. And, the goodbye, basically. The reason and I've listened to continuing legal education panels of ethics lawyers, elder law attorneys, estate planning lawyers. They encourage you to send this letter because it starts the statute of limitations running, so that if you made a mistake later on, they can't come back and sue you. This is how lawyers think, and this is how lawyers are trained. Lawyers are more concerned with the 1 in 10,000 clients that's going to sue them than the 9,999 that aren't. So I turn that around. I'm not really worried about the one client that's going to sue me. I'm insured for that anyway. So I do the reverse. I say, okay, now that you signed with us, thank you very much. We don't say goodbye. We say hello. Now, and this is our process, and it's trademarked and it's published, we're going to track your plan. If there's a law change, we'll tell you, so that you don't have to worry if these documents are going to become obsolete. They're good for the rest of your life. No use me creating a new plan that is just going to become obsolete, just like the plan that they brought into me. I want to create a better plan. So my plan says, yes, this is the law it is today, but if there's a law change, we'll tell you if you need to change your documents. So you can always rely on them for the rest of your life. Lawyers, they won't do it. I don't even have competition. No other lawyer even wants to do it because they're afraid that they don't tell somebody of a law change and the person doesn't change their documents,
How
and
do you
now
do
they'll
that?
sue them. Well, it's very easy. When there's a law change, the computer searches all the clients of that type of trust or that type of document, and it can send them a letter. Not
And then,
difficult at all.
so that's the first part of the process. So it sounds to me like you really care, like really care about developing a lifelong relationship with these people that come into your office.
Now, this is an interesting thing. So, I'm born and raised in Montreal. I moved here when I was 22. I'm 66 now, so 2/3 of my life has been in the United States. I'm also an American citizen. I have been for a number of years, so I'm dual citizen. But I think it comes from the Canadian background. It's a more social, socialist country, if you want to put it that way. But people are more, it's not as capitalist. How can I explain it? Well, I think more Canadian, like more relationship based than transaction based. Like, I want a plan. I want to create a plan for somebody that I know will work 20, 30 or more years from now. Otherwise, I just created a plan that'll work today, but nobody wants to use it today. They want to use it as far in the future as possible. So it's that desire. Basically, you know what it is in a word? It's
I
quality.
love it.
That's
I
the
love
word.
the quality. I love the striving for, and you sat down and thought about this for a long time. You've gone through the court process where you had to deal with people that didn't do it right, didn't have the will, didn't do it right, or even had a will. And you thought about a way to give your clients the control that they crave. They wanted that control. I mean, listen, we don't control when we're going to die. We don't control when we're going to become disabled. We don't control any of that stuff, but we can control what we can as far as our estate planning, our elder law planning. And I love that you're sending them a letter saying there's changes, do you want to get involved? But there's also other things you do. There's other steps as well, right?
Yeah. There's a few other things in that trademark. One is we publish a law letter once a week because information that people need to know is not in the newspaper or magazines. It's actually technical information. So we keep them advised once a week. We want an award for the law letter, but it's free. Every 2 years, this is interesting, I think. Every 2 years, we invite all our clients to breakfast. Nobody in the country does that. It's just it's totally unappreciated. But why do we have the breakfast for the client every 2 years? Well, we're building the relationship. We think it has value. We actually invest in the client relationship. And then finally, the key is this. Every 3 years, we send each client a letter in the mail and by email. It's time to come in for a free review. Very, very few lawyers around the country want to offer a free review because they're taught to, bill by the hour, at least in my field. It's not contingency like your field. So they don't want to offer a free review. But the reason I offer a free review is because I realized that if I charged for it, nobody would come in. And then, the plan would be obsolete. Or some people, if I charge for it, some people would pay, some people wouldn't. So I'd have two tiers of clients. One set of clients that are up to date and the other set of clients that are obsolete. So I made it free because it really wouldn't work otherwise. And it pays for itself. I mean, people will use us when they need a Medicaid application or when somebody dies, they'll give us the estate administration. We have a relationship. The other thing we do is, you probably know this, lawyers are trained when they do wills to have a secure place in the office, a safe or whatnot, and they store the original will for the client. And they tell the client, we're going to keep it here for safekeeping. But the reason lawyers are trained to do that is because you can only submit the original to the court in a probate proceeding. So the lawyer knows when somebody dies, they can't settle the estate without going back to that lawyer. This is the way law has been taught and practiced for decades, even more, more than 100 years. But we turn that around. We don't do that. We give the client the original, and we say, look, you have the original, and then we work hard to make them want to come back to us instead of them having to come back to us. Lawyers think they can just do the will and sit there and wait 25, 30 years. And the person, when somebody dies, the family will come back and use them.
That's a
It's
depressing
not.
business model, sounds like to me.
Well, the reason lawyers were traditionally trained that way is because we were told, here's an annuity for your retirement years. When you get older and your clients start dying off, you have an estate administration work to keep you busy, and it's not really that
You know what
stressful.
I really like? I've known Michael for a number of years, and the thing that I really, really liked about his group, you check out the picture at trustlaw.com, you see all these women, and then there's him and another fella. Tell the folks about your team, the amount of turnover you have, all that type of stuff.
Well, we don't really have any turnover, Joe. We have a happy group. We have a successful firm. Happy clients. We're dealing with seniors, the greatest generation. It's a good place to work, and we've you and I have worked together. And one of the things we've learned in our group is it's very important to eliminate negativity. So we don't have any negative, people in the firm. We move them out, so we don't have that much turnover. But when we get somebody who's not happy, either because of their personal life or their professional life or whatever, we move them out. And so we have built actually a very cohesive, happy team, which is helping us a lot in the pandemic. We communicate every day. We share stories. We share anecdotes. Philosophies, how we, our approach to this. And the biggest issue in the COVID pandemic is people's attitudes. And so we work on people's attitudes. I like to quote Shakespeare. It's very, very relevant. Shakespeare said, nothing is either good or bad except thinking makes it so. Nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. How you look at something is, completely dependent on you, and it's also going to make a huge difference in how it affects you. You can look at the pandemic as an opportunity to spend more time with your family, enrich your personal life, develop some new habits, break some old habits. Or you could say, woe is me, and just sit around lethargic and not be able to do anything. It's all
right.
It's all attitude.
So what are some of the? I know that when I was with you a couple times ago, I went up to you and I talked to you. I said, "You got any books?" And you gave me this book called Elder Law, and I read it from. I mean, listen, I thought this was going to be boring, but it wasn't. It was like I'm reading this thing. I said, this, and you can get that on Amazon.com, right?
Joe, it's not really a page turner, but you're making it, you're making a good case for it. Well, it's written in plain English. I will say that it's easy to understand, and this is, if I was born with a gift, it was the gift of being able to communicate in a way that people can understand. Lawyers virtually have a very hard time doing this. I've heard other lawyers speak, and when a lawyer speaks or gives a public seminar on elder law estate planning, they can't just say something as it is. So they'll say, well, here's the rule, but if this, then that, and then if that, then that, and if that, then this, but this is an exception to that. Okay. And as soon as you starting with but or the exception, you completely lose people because it's too much. People can't absorb. So I've had lawyers criticize me, not anymore, but in the past. I'm too senior now to have that problem. But they've criticized me in saying, well, the information you're stating is not completely accurate. I said, listen, I'm not trying to train people to take the bar exam. I've been giving them enough information, general information, they can go forward and get something done. The specific can come later. But lawyers, they can't state things generally because it's not 100% exactly correct. But, you can't communicate that way.
First of all, this breakfast thing, I want to understand the logistics of this. Do you have it every 2 years, or do you stagger it, or how do you do it?
Well, every 2 years, we invite all our clients to breakfast. We also invite their next of kin, meet the lawyer. They can bring whoever they want. The door is open. We set up 2 buffets, one on each side of the room, and we open them up from both sides. So you got 4 lines of people going because, You know how
What's the record for the biggest? What's the record for the biggest turnout for the breakfast?
Well, the firm is so large, we have to have a number of breakfasts, but probably around 250 on average.
That's a lot of eggs and bacon.
Oh my gosh, is it ever? But it's very rewarding. You see people, year after year. You actually are building a relationship. Satisfaction, professional satisfaction, comes entirely out of the relationships, that you have with people. And what's more enriching than building and developing relationships with people over time? There's nothing better. So, it pays for itself in so many ways. But
I was listening to some of the reviews of folks, and by the way, if you go to trustlaw.com, you should really sit down and watch the videos that Michael and Susanna put together describing what they do. And there's one of them that's a half hour that breaks it down pretty well, a lot better than we've done today. But I just wanted to introduce folks to Michael and his firm. But the one thing that hit me was that one of the folks, it was a senior husband and wife, and they were talking about their legacy, and it wasn't just their money. They wanted to share their life's work. And I was like, wow, that really put it the right way, is that they wanted to share their life's work with their kids and their grandkids, and they wanted to talk to somebody that could help them do it. And, Michael, it's been great talking to you. I'm hopeful that we'll talk again down the road, but I tell you, I'm very impressed with what you've done at trustlaw.com and Ettinger Law Firm in New York. You have 15 locations, isn't that right?
15, yeah. We'll try to hold on to all of them through this, Joe.
No, I'm sure you'll be fine. If I was you, I'd double down, my friend, because there isn't any other lawyer in America that has this process, and you basically get to control the process of disability, and all of us are going to die, so you get the process of controlling what happens in the future. So
you're right. You know what, Joe? You're right. As long as the mortality rate sticks around 100%, we should be okay.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. Okay. I really appreciated talking to you.
Thank you, Joe. A pleasure. Hope to do it again soon.
Thank you for listening to the opening statement with Joe Shannon. You can find us on the internet at shannonlawgroup.com or telephone our office at 312-578-9501. Have a terrific day.